Almost 1,000 bat species can be found worldwide. In fact, bats make up a quarter of all mammal species on Earth. But they can also bring diseases that are harmful to humans. Joining us to talk about bats and rabies are Diane Brewer and Judy Hardy, both registered nurses with the Rabies Control Division for Wake County Human Services. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I guess the first question, what is rabies?
Rabies is a very serious illness that can only be prevented, not treated. A person can contract the rabies virus by coming into contact with infested saliva or brain tissue of a rabid animal.
Now, do bats in North Carolina carry rabies?
Yes, they do, but only a small percentage of the bats in North Carolina carry the rabies virus.
Okay, what constitutes an exposure to a bat? A lot of folks, you know, we talk about the wild animals out there, raccoons and what have you, but very rarely people talk a lot about bat exposure.
Well, some people can be exposed to a bat and they actually know. You know, if they're outside and one comes down and flies and actually comes into contact with their skin and they're left with a scratch, a lot of times it's hard to tell whether that was a tooth or a nail from the bat, so we would have helped them evaluate that. What people don't realize is that a bat inside your home does constitute an exposure. Now, if you see it come in with you because you're bringing in groceries, that kind of thing, and you saw it and it flew back out, then that's not an exposure because you were awake and you knew that it didn't come into contact with you. The biggest issue is when someone wakes up in a room with a bat. Bats can actually bite you and you not be aware of it. They have very tiny, fine teeth. So if you are awakened by a bat that's actually flying around in your fan, or you wake up and there's one by the window, your dog is playing with it. If you have a child that's sleeping or an infant that can't tell you that they did not come into contact with the bat, or someone that had diminished capacity and is not able to tell you, then that would definitely constitute an exposure.
Now, if you have a bat and you wake up and you see one in your bedroom or just flying around the house is one thing, but obviously if you see one bat, there could be more. And what if there's a colony of bats in the attic? What should you do?
If you just find one, you can actually close off that room and call animal control in your area, and they can actually come and get the bat and test it. We do recommend that you not let them go. A lot of times animal control can go up and they'll look to see if you have an infestation in your attic, which does sometimes happen. If this happens, it's kind of a sticky situation because between May 1st and August 1st, they cannot be killed or released. So bats that are in your attic for that period of time are actually protected. They do help with insect populations. So the North Carolina Wildlife Commission actually recommends that you just sit tight. Usually if there's that many bats in your house, they will not test one bat that's found, because if you have that many, the odds are that you may have been exposed to other bats. So actually the people in that household, it would be recommended that they receive rabies vaccines.
And obviously if there's a bat flying in the room, whether it's in the den or in the bedroom and you have a pet, it's obvious to assume that you have to get your pet checked out as well.
Very good point. That's why people a lot of times will say, well, I have an indoor cat, I don't have to have that animal vaccinated for rabies. But this is one of those instances where if you have someone that has one bat and they're exposed and they have it tested and it's positive, if the animal is not up to date on its rabies vaccines, then they have to actually be quarantined for 6 months or they have to be euthanized. If they're up to date, then they just need a booster, which is a very easy fix. But again, you're looking at some hard decisions if the animal is not up to date and there has been a rabid bat in the house.
And what is the recommended treatment if someone is exposed to rabies and the bat isn't available for testing, which is so important?
Yes, it is. If a person is deemed qualified to receive the rabies treatment, they must present to a local emergency department to initiate the vaccines, because at the first visit they must receive what's called HRIG, human rabies immunoglobulin, which provides the person some almost immediate immunity to the rabies virus. And at that time they also receive the first of a series of rabies vaccines. That is considered day 0 of treatment. And then on days 3, 7, and 14, the individual would receive a subsequent rabies vaccine.
Is it hard to find bat bite marks?
Very. They're very tiny. Most people that have been exposed and even bitten aren't even aware that they were bitten, which is why it's so important not to let the bat go. If you wake up, close the windows, close the door. If it's somewhere in the house and you can put a bucket over it and weigh it down, because they're very small and they will, some people will wrap it up in a towel and put it on the porch, and by the time animal control gets there, it's not in the towel because they're very tiny and they can scoot out from under things and through things. So if you put a bowl or a bucket on them, weigh it down with something, call animal control, and just don't touch the bat. Animal control will come, they'll get it, and they'll actually submit it for testing.
So how can citizens find out more about this important issue?
Actually, they can go to a CDC website, they can go to wakedove.com. We have a myriad of different issues that'll cover bats, wild animals, domestic animals, and rabies. You'll also find lists of rabies clinics for your pets. If you find a bat in your home or you think you've been exposed to one, you just need to call the animal control that's specific for your area. And then if you see your physician or you have questions, we'll gladly help someone evaluate whether it was an exposure, whether it constitutes getting rabies. So our number is 919-250-4462.
Okay. Well, Diane Brewer and Judy Hardy, rabies control nurses for Wake County Human Services, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.